Genki was heading back home after spending 6 months away being an apprentice of a blacksmith. His friend Aoki was with him in the boat as they crossed the river to get to their village. "Aren't you tired after the long journey?" Aoki asked. Genki smiled. "How can I be? I'm happy to finally return to my home." Aoki grinned. "That smile must be for someone special. Let me guess. Suki." "Who else?" Genki asked. He had no family and lived all by himself. In the house next door lived Suki with her family. Ever since they were kids, he had been in love with her. She had been heartbroken when he announced his plans to leave, but she knew how important this apprenticeship was for him. "You think she's waiting for you after all these months?" Genki's smile withered. Suki's family wasn't too keen on her relationship with Genki because he was an orphan, but he hoped his apprenticeship would convince Suki's parents that he was serious about building his future, and so agree to their union. "Yes," Genki replied, but he realized he wasn't entirely sure. Suki was young and beautiful and had received many proposals. What were the chances she wasn't coerced into marrying someone her family deemed worthy? He decided to change the subject. "What of your wife Hayami? You must be excited to see her again." Aoki smiled sadly. "Unfortunately, she's not well. I am anxious to see her." "Don't worry, she'll recover soon, especially now that you'll be with her." When they reached the village, it was late at night and silence had descended upon it. Genki threw an uneasy glance at the house next to his where Suki lived. He couldn't wait to announce his arrival, and he wondered if she had received any of his letters. Genki went inside his home and got into his bed. Exhausted after the long journey, his eyelids grew heavy and he slipped into an easy, deep sleep. It was before dawn when he felt a touch on his arm. His eyes flickered open and he saw, right next to him on the bed, his beloved Suki, carrying a lantern adorned with flowers. "You came home. I've been waiting for you all this time," she said softly. Genki felt a burst of happiness when he saw her. "I've missed you," he said. I thought that maybe..." Suki pulled away a little and placed a hand on his cheek. "Never. I belong only to you, my love." And they spent the night together. When morning came, Genki woke up to find the space next to him on the bed empty. He frowned. When he got out of bed, he felt dizzy. He steadied himself and sat down again, blaming it on the long journey he had. He got up again and slowly went about his daily routine. He found work at the local blacksmith and spent hours waiting for his work to be over so he could go see Suki again. By the time he headed home, it was late at night, and there appeared to be no sounds coming from her home. He assumed she must have fallen asleep. Exhausted, he fell into bed once more and got up when he felt a hand on his cheek. He caught the hand. "Suki," he said, recognizing her touch. "Yes, my love," she spoke tenderly. Genki brought her closer, and they spent the night together once more. This went on for several days, and each morning Genki woke up, exhausted and dizzy. Aoki noticed him at the market one day and remarked, "Genki, you look ill. You look like you've lost weight. Is everything all right? Perhaps you need to see a doctor and get your health checked." Genki shook his head. "I'm just overworked, nothing else. How is Hayami now?" "A little better. How is Suki?" his friend asked. "She's fine. I see her every day." "Have you not asked for her hand yet?" Aoki joked. Genki looked perplexed and revealed to his friend that he saw her every night and that she would leave early the next morning before he woke up. "That is peculiar," Aoki said. "And in all this time you haven't seen her during the daytime." Genki got quiet. "What are you implying?" He grew defensive. Aoki grew closer and threw furtive glances around them. "There's a rumor of a yokai roaming these parts." Genki got angry. "How dare you accuse my Suki of being a yokai? I will not listen to a word against her." Aoki frowned. "I don't mean to offend you, but you haven't seen her during the day, have you?" Genki left without another word, but later at night, he wondered if perhaps there was something odd about Suki after all. "What is it, my love?" Suki asked. Genki caught the hand that touched his chest. How about tomorrow we go to the garden, around noon? I'll take a break from work then for lunch. Suki smiled. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Genkei's suspicions grew. The next day he waited for Suki to show up at the garden, but she didn't. 2 hours later, he headed towards her house and knocked on the door. There was no response. Finally, he went to his friend Aoki and told him what happened. How would you feel if I come tonight to your house? He suggested. If Suki comes to see you, perhaps I can meet her too. I'm not sure, Genkei said. Aoki sighed. All right, I'll stand outside the house and look in through the window. Genkei wasn't pleased with the idea of his friend spying, but gave in when his friend wouldn't relent. That night, Genkei couldn't sleep. His friend had taken up a chair and was sitting outside the house. They were both waiting for Suki to come. Hours passed, and both realized that Suki wasn't going to come after all. Genkei grew worried and hoped Suki was safe. He'd almost dozed off when he felt a hand on his arm. He woke up with a start and saw Suki sitting on the foot of the bed, smiling. Where were you? Genkei asked. I've been looking for you the whole day. Were we supposed to meet? Why didn't you come and find me? Suki appeared confused. Genkei glanced at the window and saw his friend peering at them. Even in the pale moonlight, he could see the shock on his friend's face. Aoki opened the window wider and cried out, Get away from her! She's a yokai! Suki gasped and stood. Genkei looked at his friend, and then at Suki, not understanding at first, but slowly, as if a trance was being lifted. He saw her true form. Her skin melted away, showing the bones underneath. Her eyes were hollow, and her grin wide. She was a skeleton, dressed as a woman. He screamed and pulled away from her. Suki still appeared confused. What is the matter? Genkei felt an icy grip on his heart. Aoki entered the room, knife in hand. Stay away from him. Leave this house. Suki cried out in fear and left. I warned you, Aoki said. She's a yokai. She's been feeding off you, which is why you've been feeling so tired all the time. She would have killed you had the truth about her not been revealed. Genkei sat back down on his bed, confused and frightened. Had he really been spending the night with a ghost? The next morning, he went straight to Suki's house. He wanted answers. He knocked until the door opened, and Suki's parents came out. Genkei demanded to know about Suki, still not convinced that the ghost that visited him was indeed her. Suki's parents looked sorrowful. She died the day after you left, her father said. We forced her to marry someone else. She said she belonged to you, and only you, and so she drowned herself in the river. Genkei was shocked and couldn't believe that his beloved was no more. He walked away, heartbroken. That night as he lay in bed thinking about Suki, she appeared to him once more, as beautiful as ever, carrying a lantern with a flower design. What's the matter? She asked softly. Genkei looked at her, realizing he was no longer frightened. Suki, the woman he had always loved, was with him. Do you remember what happened to you? He asked. She looked confused. You died. You drowned yourself in the river. And ever since, you've been roaming around the living world, waiting and searching for me. In the moonlight, Suki turned into her true form, that of a skeleton woman. She gasped, I don't remember all that. All I remember is you. That morning when we were supposed to meet, I woke up to see that I wasn't myself anymore. All I could see were my bones. I panicked and I didn't know what happened to me. Then the sun went down, and I no longer could remember what I was afraid of. All I could think about was that I wanted to see you. Genkei wept into his hands. It's better if you left. You need to find peace. I can't, she cried. All I know is I want to be near you. I wake up every day, and the only road I see is the one that leads to you. During the day I'm all bones, but at night when I come to you, I am me again. The woman I used to be. Genkei held her hand, realizing that he too didn't want to part from her. And an idea formed in his head, about how he could be with Suki during the day too. The next night, when Suki visited him, he gave her a present. She was in her true form, no longer finding the need to hide from her lover. She opened the box and saw a mask of a woman. "Now perhaps you can come with me during the daytime too. We can always be together." And so, the next morning, Genki walked with Suki to the market, uncaring what the people around them were whispering. Despite the mask, Suki held a folding fan near her face, feeling frightened. "There's nothing to be afraid of," he assured her. "I will always remain by your side." He hoped he could keep his promise, considering he felt weaker every day. It wouldn't be long until he joined her in death's embrace. Genki passed by Aoki's store and saw his friend watching him apprehensively. He knew his friend must have known that the woman he was walking with was not really a living woman at all. Aoki returned home after work. It was late, and there was only silence in the village, and now his home too. His wife, Hayami, had recently passed away, but he hadn't told Genki about it yet. How could he, when his friend was consorting with a yokai? Still, he wondered what he would have done in Genki's place. Would he have turned away his beloved too, if she returned from the dead? "Would you?" A soft voice spoke in the dark. Aoki's heart lurched, and he sat up, peering in the darkness. A lantern lit up, and he received a fright. There, in the corner of his room, sat his wife, Hayami. The lantern, adorned with red flowers, glowed in her hand. "I've returned to you, my love," she spoke. And then she grinned, a deathly grin. Aoki shrieked when he saw the flesh melting away, to reveal the skeleton underneath.